You're watching East Asia tonight right here on CNA. Well, circling back now to one of our headlines. 14 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit subversion under the city's Beijing-imposed national security law. Well, 2 others have been acquitted, but prosecutors say they intend to appeal the acquittals. The 16 who entered not guilty pleas are among 47 people charged in 2021 for their roles in holding an unofficial primary election in 2020 against government orders. And those convicted include former Democratic lawmakers. Well, the verdict is the city's biggest trial against the Democratic opposition and comes more than 3 years after police raided and arrested dozens of activists across the city. Beijing imposed the national security law in Hong Kong after huge and sometimes violent pro-democracy protests brought the finance hub to a standstill. The foreign ministry in Beijing says that China firmly supports Hong Kong's law enforcement and judicial authorities in what they call punishing acts that violate national security. And for more on this, our correspondent Deborah Wong, she joins us now live from Hong Kong. So, Deborah, what is next for the 14 activists who have been found guilty?
So court has been tentatively adjourned till June 25th, and that is when the defendants will be filing their mitigation pleas. Sentencing will only come at a later date, but for sentences that will range from 3 years anytime all the way until life imprisonment, because that is the offence that is under the national security law, and it also really depends on their level of participation in the case. Now, before the trial comments, 31 defendants of the 47 who were initially charged. They include prominent activists like Joshua, Wong, Benny Tai, as well as Lester Sham. They had all pleaded guilty in hopes of getting a reduced sentence. And among that 31 people, several of them actually turned prosecution witness during the trial. And there were actually 2 defendants of the 16 who were, who initially contested the charges. 2 of them were acquitted this morning when the court started at about 10 a.m. But their relief was actually quite short-lived because the Department of Justice had actually announced their intention to appeal against the acquittal. One of them, we did speak to him quite briefly, Lei Shun. He spoke briefly to the media, but he didn't really want to comment too much because he said that he expects that the DOJ would eventually file an application to appeal against the acquittal, and that is eventually what happened.
And Deborah, you were there in court in the morning. What was the atmosphere like? And I guess more importantly, what does this verdict mean for Hong Kong as a whole?
So court this morning, the atmosphere was really quite heavy with police presence. When I arrived, hundreds of police were stationed all around West Kowloon Court, even the roads leading up to the court. They were only rivaled by the long snaking queues of people waiting for the public gallery to open. The line stretched all the way to the next building behind the court. Court started at 10 a.m., but many of them actually started queuing even since dawn. We also did see opposition party, the League of Social Democrats. They arrived and they actually at some point unfurled a banner. They wanted to protest against the case, but they were promptly stopped by the police from unfurling the banner. And I understand just a couple of hours ago that they have been arrested for misconduct. But inside the courtroom, as proceedings were underway, just as the verdict was mentioned, there were some supporters present who were visibly quite emotional. Shortly after the proceedings, they emerged from the courtroom. They were hugging each other. They were crying. Evidently, they are possibly family and friends of the defendants, and there were also long lines of reporters as well in the press room and the gallery. I did see a lot of international media in attendance. Not surprising because this case, really, given the gravity of the situation and the scale of the arrest, it really did draw a lot of international scrutiny. And we also did see several consular officers in attendance as well. Both the UK and Australian consulates, after the verdict, they expressed concerns about the verdict. The US and the European Union also said that the case was politically motivated, and they even questioned Hong Kong's commitment to openness. So really, I think that the international scrutiny on Hong Kong's openness really comes into play here because not forgetting Hong Kong recently enacted the Article 23, its own domestic national security law. And we did see some arrests happening earlier this week ahead of the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen incident. So critics are saying that this crackdown on dissent will really overshadow Hong Kong's attempt to attract the international business community. But authorities say that this really ensures stability for the long term. Back to you.
Thanks so very much for that report. Deborah Wong speaking to us live from Hong Kong.